The last line of defense. Colonel James Reeves stood at the window of what remained of the Pentagon, watching Washington, D.C. burn. 6 days since the Arcturian warships had appeared in Earth's orbit. 6 days of conventional military forces being obliterated across the globe. How bad is it? He asked, not turning around. General Maria Sanchez sighed heavily behind him. Bad. China's last missile battery just went dark. Russia's Northern Fleet, gone. Our carrier groups in the Pacific, nothing left but debris. Reeves nodded silently. The aliens' technology was simply too advanced. Their energy shields rendered conventional weapons useless. Their precision strikes eliminated military targets with surgical efficiency. Their ground forces, protected by personal shields, marched through artillery barrages without slowing down. And the civilian casualties? He finally asked. Minimal, actually, Sanchez replied, sliding a tablet across the makeshift desk. They're being precise. They want Earth intact, just subdued. Reeves finally turned around. At 62, his weathered face had seen more conflicts than he cared to remember. Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, the South China Sea crisis of 2031. His gray hair was cropped military short, and a long scar ran down the side of his neck, a souvenir from Kandahar, 2026. They're fighting like gentlemen, he said, almost to himself. They're fighting by rules. Is that a problem? Asked Captain Lee, a young officer who had somehow survived the destruction of the Joint Chiefs meeting 3 days earlier. Reeves looked at the young officer, then exchanged glances with Sanchez. They both knew what the other was thinking. Both had seen enough war to understand what the aliens didn't. Yes, Reeves finally said. It's their weakness. Sir. Lee looked confused. The Arcturians fight wars like they're playing chess, Sanchez explained. Move and countermove. Tactical precision. Minimizing collateral damage. By their communications, we've learned they've conquered 17 star systems this way. But humans don't fight wars like chess, Reeves continued. We fight them like hell. He walked to the tactical display showing the alien positions around the globe. Their methodical advance was textbook perfect, too perfect. Every military in human history that's won against superior forces did it by changing the rules, Reeves said quietly. The Arcturians have better technology, better weapons, better everything. But they've never faced humans before. What are you suggesting, Colonel? General Sanchez asked, though her expression suggested she already knew. Our active military is decimated. Conventional tactics have failed, Reeves said. But we have something they haven't encountered yet. Which is? Lee asked. Veterans, Reeves replied simply. Not current military. They're trained for modern, conventional warfare. I'm talking about veterans from our messiest conflicts. People who fought in the streets of Fallujah, the mountains of Afghanistan, the jungles of Vietnam. People who learned to win when outgunned and outnumbered. Guerrilla fighters, Sanchez nodded slowly. Unconventional warfare specialists. Exactly, Reeves confirmed. The Arcturians fight with honor and precision. They've never faced an enemy that plants IEDs, that uses civilian clothes to hide fighters, that strikes and disappears into the night. You're talking about fighting dirty, Lee said, sounding uncertain. I'm talking about surviving, Reeves corrected sharply. The Arcturians want a clean conquest. Let's show them how messy humans can make things. 3 hours later, a secure bunker 50 feet below the ruins of West Virginia's Fort Apache military base housed an emergency meeting. The few remaining government officials had approved Reeves' plan out of desperation. Operation Last Stand was now in effect. The broadcast is ready, Colonel, a communications specialist reported. Reeves straightened his uniform and faced the camera. The emergency broadcast system would carry his message to every functioning communication device on the planet. It was Earth's last hope. My fellow citizens of Earth, he began, his voice steady despite the weight of what he was about to say. Many of you know our situation. The Arcturian forces have disabled most of our conventional military defenses. Their technology is beyond anything we possess." He paused, letting the grim reality sink in. But there is one thing they don't understand: the human spirit. Throughout our history, we have faced overwhelming odds and prevailed. Not because we had better weapons or technology, but because we refused to surrender. The bunker was silent except for the hum of emergency generators. "I am activating the Veterans Emergency Response Protocol. If you have served in any combat zone, if you fought in any war on Earth, your planet needs you one more time. We need your experience, your ingenuity, your will to survive against impossible odds." Across the planet, in small towns and big cities, millions of men and women who had hung up their uniforms years or decades ago listened. In nursing homes, retirement communities, farms and factories, they heard the call. "The Arcturians fight with rules," Reeves continued. "They fight clean. They've never faced an enemy that rewrites the rules of engagement. They've never faced humans who have nothing left to lose." In a small farm in Nebraska, Thomas Jenkins, a 72-year-old Vietnam veteran, listened with his wife. In Barcelona, Carmen Rodriguez, who had fought in the Middle Eastern conflicts of the 2020s, turned up the volume. In Nairobi, David Amandi, a veteran of peacekeeping operations gone wrong in the Congo, nodded grimly. "Report to your nearest gathering point. Bring whatever skills you have. We don't need polished soldiers. We need fighters. We need survivors." The coordinates are being transmitted to your devices now. The transmission ended, and Reeves sank into a chair. "Will they come?" Lee asked softly. General Sanchez looked at the young captain. "They'll come. When you've fought in the dirt and blood, when you've seen your friends die, it creates a bond. They'll come." She was right. Within 24 hours, gathering points across the globe reported the arrival of veterans. Some came with walking canes, others with prosthetic limbs. Many brought ancient weapons kept as mementos. All brought experience written in the lines of their faces and the steadiness of their gazes. At the Virginia gathering point, Reeves met the first group personally. Men and women ranging from their 30s to their 80s. Different wars, different decades, but the same determined look in their eyes. Among them was Maya Henderson, a 58-year-old former Marine who had fought in urban conflict zones across 3 continents. Her salt and pepper hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and she moved with the fluid grace of someone who had never stopped training. "Colonel," she greeted Reeves with a crisp salute. "First Sergeant Henderson, retired. I brought some friends." She gestured to the motley group behind her. "We've been monitoring the Arcturian communications," Reeves explained as they walked toward the underground facility. "They consider this conquest almost complete. They're preparing for formal surrender ceremonies." Henderson snorted. "Sounds like they don't know much about human history." "Exactly," Reeves agreed. "They fight war like it's a formal dance. They've never experienced human chaos." Inside the bunker, captured Arcturian technology was laid out for examination. Weapons, communication devices, even pieces of their armor. Technical specialists, many of them veterans of cyber warfare, worked alongside mechanics who had maintained vehicles in the harshest combat zones on Earth. "They're vulnerable to electromagnetic pulses," a former Navy tech was explaining. "Their shields go down for approximately 3.7 seconds when hit with the right frequency." Nearby, other veterans were already modifying human weapons to exploit this weakness. "Their tactics are predictable," Maya commented, studying the battle footage. "They advance in perfect formation. No adaptation, no improvisation. They've never needed it," Reeves replied. "Until now." As night fell, more veterans arrived. By dawn, the first counterattack plans were ready. Not a conventional military operation, but something the Arcturians would never expect. A chaotic, improvisational guerrilla campaign unlike anything they had encountered in their conquests. An Arcturian commander, Supreme Tactician Borks, stood on the bridge of the Imperial flagship Resolute Doctrine, observing Earth through the viewscreen. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of satisfaction among his species. "The conquest proceeds precisely as calculated," he informed Arch-General Krev. "Human military resistance has been reduced to 11.4% of initial capacity. We project total capitulation within 96 Earth hours." "Excellent," the Arch-General replied. "This world will make a fine addition to the Empire. Their resources are substantial, and the population will be useful laborers." "They fought with admirable discipline," Vorks noted, "though their technology is primitive. Their formations and tactics were predictable, following established military doctrine." A subordinate officer approached with a data tablet. "Supreme Tactician, we're detecting unusual activity in several regions. Non-standard gatherings of humans at locations that don't correspond to known military installations." Vorks dismissed the concern with a wave of his hand. "Civilian refugees, most likely. Continue the conquest protocol, as established." The officer hesitated. "Sir, our predictive algorithms indicate these gatherings don't match refugee behavior patterns." "Noted in the log," Vorks said impatiently. "The humans are defeated. What remains is merely the formality of their surrender." As the Supreme Tactician turned back to the viewscreen, he had no way of knowing that the real war was just beginning, that the humans he was about to face didn't care about formations, protocols, or the proper way to wage war. They didn't fight for glory or expansion or resources. They fought to survive. And that made them more dangerous than anything the Arcturian Empire had ever encountered. Old dogs, new tricks. The abandoned mining facility outside of Perth, Australia, had become an unlikely headquarters for the South Pacific veteran resistance. 68-year-old Sergeant Major William Bull Cooper wiped sweat from his brow as he examined the captured Arcturian rifle. The weapon was elegant, precise, and entirely too predictable. "See this?" He pointed to the power cell housing. "They designed it so it can only be loaded one way. No field modifications possible." Around him, 24 veterans from conflicts spanning 50 years nodded. Some had fought in Vietnam, others in Iraq, Afghanistan, or the Indonesian crisis of 2032. They shared the same weathered look, people who had seen the worst humanity could offer and survived. "That's their weakness," continued Cooper, his Australian accent thick with disdain. "Their entire military philosophy is built on perfect execution of established protocols. No improvisation." He picked up a second rifle, already modified by their team. Wires protruded from the casing, connecting to a jury-rigged human battery pack. "We've overclocked the power cell. It'll fire at 180% capacity now." "For how long before it melts down?" asked Lakshmi Patel, a former Indian Special Forces operator. Cooper grinned, revealing a missing canine tooth. "About 30 seconds. Then it becomes a grenade." This was the essence of what was happening in resistance pockets across the planet. Veterans weren't trying to match Arcturian technology. They were subverting it, reshaping it to fight in ways the aliens had never imagined. In Chicago, Maya Henderson led a different kind of preparation. Her team had captured an Arcturian scout vehicle, a sleek anti-gravity platform designed for reconnaissance. "Their vehicles have no manual controls," she explained to her group. "Everything is linked to their central command network through quantum entanglement. They literally can't understand the concept of a vehicle that doesn't report its position and status." Former auto mechanic and Iraq War veteran Carlos Rodriguez was already elbow-deep in the vehicle's propulsion system. "I can bypass this," he muttered. "Just need to trick the system into thinking it's still connected while actually running independently." "How long?" Maya asked. "Give me 6 hours," Carlos replied. "By morning, we'll have our own alien tank." Similar scenes played out globally. In the mountains of Switzerland, veteran snipers studied the Arcturian body armor, identifying microscopic gaps at joint articulations. In the Brazilian rainforest, Jungle warfare experts developed camouflage that could fool Arcturian thermal sensors. In the ruins of Seoul, former cyber warfare specialists worked to intercept and decode enemy communications. At an Arcturian forward operating base near what had been Moscow, Tactical Officer Zen was puzzled by irregular readings on her security grid. "Commander Krall," she called to her superior, "I'm detecting anomalies in sectors 7 through 12. Commander Krall, a decorated officer with 17 successful planetary conquests to his name, glanced at the display with his 4 eyes. "Explain." "Scattered energy signatures, small, moving erratically. They don't match any known human military patterns." Krall dismissed her concerns. "Probably civilians with scavenged technology. Maintain standard security protocols." "Yes, Commander," Zen replied, though uncertainty lingered in her voice. Just then, the base perimeter alarm activated, then immediately went silent. "Status report," Krall demanded. "Perimeter breach in Sector 9. A security officer reported. "But that's impossible. Our shields are at full strength." Before Krall could respond, the lights went out. Emergency illumination activated seconds later, bathing the command center in a dim purple glow. "What is happening?" Krall demanded, his composure slipping. The answer came in the form of chaos. From multiple entry points, small teams of human veterans breached the base. They weren't wearing uniforms. Many were in civilian clothes with just fragments of body armor. Some were visibly aged, moving with the stiffness of old injuries, but they moved with purpose, with experience. And most disturbingly to the Arcturians, they didn't move as a unified force. Each small team seemed to operate independently, adapting moment by moment. "They're not following any tactical doctrine," Zen exclaimed in confusion as she watched the security feeds. "Their movements make no strategic sense." Commander Krall watched in growing horror as his perfectly organized base dissolved into chaotic skirmishes. The humans were using modified Arcturian weapons alongside primitive projectile firearms. Some even wielded improvised explosives and melee weapons. "Implement counterinsurgency protocol Theta 9, he ordered, falling back on established doctrine. But the protocol assumed an enemy that fought according to recognizable patterns. These humans didn't. They didn't establish clear front lines. They didn't secure territory in a logical sequence. Some teams focused on destroying communications equipment, others on weapons depots, while still others seemed intent on creating maximum confusion. In the middle of the chaos, Sergeant Jackson Kim, a 59-year-old veteran of the Korean unification conflict, planted explosive charges on the base's power distribution node. Next to him, former Spetsnaz operative Nikolai Petrov, now in his 70s, stood guard with a modified Arcturian rifle. 4 minutes, Kim muttered as he worked. Just like Pyongyang in 31. Petrov grunted. In Grozny, we had no fancy timers, just matches and good timing. A squad of Arcturian soldiers rounded the corner, moving in perfect formation. Petrov aimed and fired. The overcharged weapon cut through the lead alien's shield like it wasn't there, the beam continuing through to hit 2 more behind him. "Their shields are calibrated for standard energy outputs," Kim commented as he finished setting the charges. "They never considered someone would modify their weapons to overload." "Humans always break the toys we're given," Petrov replied with grim satisfaction. Across the base, similar scenes unfolded. Carlos Rodriguez drove the modified scout vehicle directly through the command center wall, its gravity drive screaming in protest at the modifications he'd made. Maya Henderson led a team that secured the communications array, uploading a virus created by the cyber team in Seoul. Commander Krall watched his perfect military operation unravel in ways his training had never prepared him for. These weren't soldiers in the way Arcturians understood warfare. These were something else entirely. "Implement full retreat," he finally ordered. "Evacuate all personnel immediately." "Sir," Zen questioned, shocked. "We outnumber them significantly." "Numbers mean nothing against whatever this is," Krall replied. a new emotion entering his voice. Fear. As the Arcturians retreated, the veterans didn't pursue. They completed their objectives, disrupting communications, gathering intelligence, capturing technology, and most importantly, creating fear. 2 hours later, Colonel Reeves received the reports from similar operations conducted simultaneously across the globe. Casualties? He asked grimly. Lower than expected, General Sanchez replied. We lost 23 worldwide. The Arcturians lost hundreds, plus 8 bases and 17 vehicles. Reeves nodded solemnly. Every human life lost hit hard. These were people who had already given so much in previous wars. But the strategy was working. What's the Arcturian response? He asked. Confusion, Sanchez said with grim satisfaction. Their communications indicate they're trying to understand what they're facing. They keep referring to us as irregular combatants and searching their tactical databases for appropriate responses. They won't find any, said Maya Henderson, entering the command center. Her uniform was scorched, and a bandage covered her forearm. We're not fighting according to any recognized doctrine. Every team is adapting based on the experience of its members. That's our advantage, Reeves agreed. They're fighting the last war. We're fighting all of them, simultaneously. On the Arcturian flagship, Supreme Tactician Vorks reviewed the disturbing reports with growing concern. This doesn't conform to human military doctrine, he insisted. According to our intelligence, Earth's military forces operate under strict hierarchical command structures. The evidence suggests otherwise, Arch-General Krev replied coldly. These attacks were coordinated but executed with local autonomy. Their tactics are primitive, yet effective. They've modified our technology, Vork said, still struggling to comprehend. That violates all protocols of warfare. Krev's patience was wearing thin. They don't care about our protocols. Don't you understand? These humans fight differently. For the first time in his distinguished career, Vorks felt uncertainty. The Arcturian Empire had conquered 17 systems by following the same perfect strategy: overwhelming technological superiority, precise application of force, and the inevitable surrender of the inferior species. But these humans weren't following the script. They were fighting asymmetrically, adapting Arcturian technology in ways the designers had never intended, and striking without warning before disappearing again. Perhaps, Vorks suggested hesitantly, we should modify our approach. Krev stared at him as if he had proposed something obscene. We follow the Imperial Conquest Protocol, as we have for 12 generations. Increase the deployment of ground forces by 200%. Implement a global surveillance grid. Find these veterans and eliminate them. As Vorks acknowledged the order, he couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. Something told him that more of the same would not work against an enemy that refused to fight by the established rules of warfare. Back on Earth, in the underground command center, Colonel Reeves addressed the gathered veteran team leaders. Phase 1 was successful, he announced. We've shown them we can hurt them. Now they'll change tactics. More forces, more surveillance, more aggressive posture. Good, said Bull Cooper, his weathered face breaking into a grim smile. Let them waste resources trying to fight a conventional war against ghosts. Reeves nodded. Phase 2 begins tomorrow. We take this fight off Earth. The veterans exchanged glances. Many had fought across mountains, deserts, and cities. None had ever fought in space. We've secured 10 Arcturian shuttles, Reeves explained. And we have pilots among us who have been training on the alien control systems. Maya Henderson raised an eyebrow. You want us to take the fight to their ships? They'll never expect it, Reeves replied simply. They think we're primitives fighting a desperate last stand on our own planet. They don't realize that humans have always been explorers as much as fighters. As the meeting concluded, Maya found herself standing next to Thomas Jenkins, the Vietnam veteran from Nebraska. Did you ever think you'd fight another war? She asked quietly. Jenkins shook his head, his eyes distant with memories. After Nam, I swore never again. After each conflict, we all say the same thing. Never again. But here we are. Here we are, she agreed. But this time, Jenkins continued, his voice strengthening, we're not fighting for some politician's agenda, or for oil or territory. We're fighting for the whole damn planet. Maya nodded. And this time, we're fighting our way. Across Earth, as darkness fell, the veterans prepared. Old soldiers checked captured alien weapons with the same careful attention they once gave to M16s or AK-47s. Former medics stocked field kits with both human and adapted Arcturian supplies. Engineers and mechanics continued to modify alien technology in ways its creators had never imagined. The Arcturians had come expecting a conquered world to add to their empire. Instead, they had awakened something they didn't understand: the collective experience and ingenuity of Earth's warriors, unbounded by conventional military thinking, united by a cause greater than any they had fought for before. Phase 2 would take this unexpected resistance to the stars, and nothing in the Arcturian combat doctrine had prepared them for what was coming. Guerrilla among the stars. The Arcturian shuttle bay was silent except for the soft hum of maintenance drones. Security had been minimal. Who would attack a vessel in orbit? In the Arcturian military philosophy, spacecraft were sanctuaries, protected by the vacuum of space and the impossibility of surprise attacks. This assumption was about to be proven catastrophically wrong. 6 modified Arcturian shuttles approached the massive warship unwavering doctrine. On official channels, they transmitted valid identification codes, stolen from previous raids and reprogrammed by Earth's cyber warfare veterans. Inside the lead shuttle, former NASA pilot and Afghanistan veteran Sarah Chen guided the alien craft with surprising finesse. Approaching docking sequence, she announced calmly, "Everyone remember, move fast, stick to objectives, 15 minutes maximum." Behind her, 5 veterans from 4 different Earth conflicts checked their gear. The oldest, Richard Mbeki, had fought in the Congo Wars of the 2010s. At 70, his hand still moved with practiced precision as he checked his modified Arcturian rifle. "Just like Kinshasa," he murmured, "except colder." Aboard the unwavering doctrine, Junior Security Officer Tawn noticed something unusual about the approaching shuttles. "Sir, those maintenance vessels are returning ahead of schedule," he reported to his superior. Security Chief Malk barely glanced at the display. "Probably finished their hull inspections early. Authenticate their codes." Codes authenticate, but their approach vector is irregular. Malk finally looked up with mild irritation. "Meaning?" "They're not following standard docking protocol. They're approaching simultaneously rather than sequentially." For a species obsessed with procedure, this was unusual enough to warrant attention. Malk was about to order a security team when the shuttle suddenly accelerated. "Collision alert," Tawn shouted. But the shuttles didn't crash into the warship. Instead, they executed a perfect formation landing, touching down simultaneously at different points across the massive shuttle bay. Before Arcturian security could respond, the shuttle doors blew outward, and the veterans of Earth charged onto the alien deck. Security breach in Hangar Bay 7. Malk yelled into the communication system. Multiple hostile forces. In the command center, Commander Vrak received the alert with disbelief. Humans? Here. Impossible. But security feeds confirmed the unthinkable. Humans were aboard his vessel, moving with surprising confidence through the alien environment. Colonel Reeves had selected the teams carefully for this mission. Each 6-person unit was led by a veteran with special operations experience, accompanied by specialists in explosives, technology, medicine, and combat. They didn't move like a conventional military unit. Instead, they operated with the fluid adaptability that comes from decades of varied combat experience. Sarah Chen's team headed for the propulsion control systems. Richard Mbeki's group targeted weapons. Other teams moved toward communications, life support, and the command center itself. Commander Vrak deployed security forces according to standard protocol. establishing defensive perimeters at critical systems, moving in ordered formations to intercept the intruders. It was textbook Arcturian military doctrine. It was exactly what the veterans expected. In a maintenance corridor, Maya Henderson's team encountered an Arcturian security squad. The aliens moved in perfect formation, energy shields activated, weapons at the ready. By all conventional military logic, 6 humans with improvised weapons should have been quickly overwhelmed. But Maya's team didn't fight conventionally. 2 veterans tossed modified Arcturian power cells ahead of them. The overloaded cells created an electromagnetic pulse that temporarily disrupted the alien shields and helmet communications. In the momentary confusion, the humans attacked, not as a unit, but as individual fighters, each moving differently. One slid beneath the expected firing line. Another jumped to overhead pipes and fired from above, while Maya herself charged directly at the center, firing a weapon modulated to a frequency the Arcturians hadn't defended against. "They don't adapt," she shouted to her team as the alien formation crumbled. "They're fighting by the manual." Similar scenes played out across the massive warship. The Arcturians had superior technology, superior numbers, and home field advantage. What they lacked was the experience of fighting enemies who didn't play by the rules, who didn't value formation and order over effectiveness. In the ship's propulsion control room, Sarah Chen's team worked quickly to place explosive charges while 2 veterans held off security forces at the door. 4 minutes, announced former demolitions expert Diego Vega as he strategically placed the explosives. Their engine design is actually pretty similar to nuclear submarines. Remove these control rods, and the whole system goes into emergency shutdown. Outside the propulsion room, a massive security response was building. Dozens of Arcturian soldiers moved into position, preparing for a textbook breach and clear operation. Inside, Chen checked her watch. 2 minutes until simultaneous detonation across all targets. We need an exit strategy. Diego grinned and pointed upward to the maintenance shafts. They build their ships like they fight, predictably. These run throughout the vessel, and I bet they're not in their security protocols as potential access routes. Across the ship, the other teams were making similar discoveries. The Arcturians designed everything with elegant efficiency and consistency, which made their systems dangerously predictable to veterans who had spent lifetimes learning to exploit weaknesses. In the command center, Commander Vrak watched with growing horror as his security teams reported failure after failure. The humans weren't fighting to hold territory or establish positions. They struck critical systems and disappeared. They're in the maintenance conduits. A security officer finally realized. They're using service passages to move between targets. Impossible, Vrak replied automatically. Those passages are too small for combat operations. But the humans weren't conducting combat operations as the Arcturians understood them. They were fighting dirty, crawling through tight spaces, attacking from unexpected angles, using the ship's own systems against its crew. Exactly 15 minutes after the teams had boarded, simultaneous explosions rocked the massive warship. Not massive, destructive blasts. Instead, precisely targeted detonations that disabled propulsion, weapons, communications, and environmental controls. As alarm klaxons blared, the human teams retreated to their shuttles. Not all made it. 17 veterans would not return from this mission. But the rest boarded their vessels and launched, just as the unwavering doctrine began to drift, its systems failing. "They're retreating," reported a bewildered Arcturian officer. They didn't attempt to destroy the vessel or capture it. Commander Vrak stared at the damage reports in disbelief. They didn't need to destroy us. They just humiliated us. That was the point. As the shuttles returned to Earth, Colonel Reeves received the mission report with grim satisfaction. The operation had accomplished multiple objectives: gathering intelligence, testing Arcturian responses in space, capturing more technology, and most importantly, destroying the enemy's sense of invulnerability. How did they react? He asked Maya Henderson as her team debriefed. "Exactly as predicted," she replied. They followed standard security protocols, established defensive perimeters around what they considered critical systems. No adaptation, no improvisation. "What about casualties?" Reeves asked, his voice softening. "We lost good people," Maya acknowledged, grief evident in her voice. But they understood the stakes. As news of the raid spread among the Arcturian fleet, something unprecedented happened. For the first time in their long history of conquests, doubt crept into the Arcturian military hierarchy. Supreme Tactician Vorks faced the High Command's holographic projections, his posture rigid with suppressed stress. "The humans have demonstrated capabilities beyond our intelligence assessments," he reported. "They have adapted our technology, infiltrated our vessels, and employed tactics outside all recognized parameters of warfare." "How is this possible?" demanded High Commander Zox, the projected image flickering slightly. "They are a pre-FTL species with primitive military doctrine. The humans we're facing aren't their regular military," Vorks explained, reviewing the intelligence they'd gathered. "They appear to be veterans of previous Earth conflicts, older humans with experience in what they call asymmetric warfare." "Irregular combatants," sneered another commander. "Barbarians. Effective barbarians," Vorks corrected quietly. "Our casualties are mounting. 3 capital ships disabled, 27 ground bases compromised. And now they've demonstrated the ability to strike our orbital vessels." High Commander Zox's expression darkened. "What are you suggesting, tactician?" Vorks hesitated, knowing his next words bordered on heresy. "I suggest we modify our approach. The standard conquest protocol assumes an enemy that fights according to predictable patterns. These humans don't." The suggestion was met with shocked silence. The Arcturian Empire had conquered 17 systems using the same protocols, refined over generations. To suggest changing them was to question centuries of military doctrine. "Unacceptable," Zox finally declared. "We will increase force deployment by 500%, implement total surveillance, eliminate civilian population centers if necessary. The humans don't value order like we do." Vorks tried again. "Increasing force using the same tactics will only—" "You are relieved of duty, Tactician Vorks," Zox interrupted coldly. "Report for psychological evaluation. Your replacement will implement proper protocols." As the transmission ended, Vorks stood alone on the command deck, a terrible realization dawning. The Empire's greatest strength, its perfect, unchanging order, had become its fatal weakness against an enemy that thrived on chaos and adaptation. Back on Earth, the resistance was growing. The success of the space raid had inspired millions. More veterans emerged from hiding, bringing with them not just military experience, but the ingenuity and resourcefulness that humans had always shown in crisis. In a converted warehouse in what had once been Detroit, a group of engineers, many of them veterans of various conflicts, worked on the most ambitious project yet. They had captured an intact Arcturian shuttle and were not just modifying it, but completely reinventing it. "The Arcturians design everything for a specific purpose," explained Dr. Fatima Nazari, a former medical officer who had served in the West African conflict. "They can't conceive of using technology for anything other than its intended function." She gestured to the partially disassembled shuttle. Where Arcturian technology had been precise and elegant, the human modifications looked crude. Wires exposed, additional components bolted on haphazardly, systems jury-rigged together. "It's not pretty," acknowledged Carlos Rodriguez, wiping grease from his hands. "But it'll work. We've converted their defensive energy shield into an offensive pulse weapon." Colonel Reeves examined the modified craft with admiration. Human ingenuity at its finest, taking the enemy's technology and reimagining it in ways the creators had never conceived. "How soon?" he asked. 2 days, Carlos replied. "Then we take the fight to their flagship." As night fell across a planet at war, the veterans of countless human conflicts prepared for their greatest battle yet. They had fought for countries, for ideologies, for territory. Now they fought for humanity's very survival, using the hard-won wisdom of Earth's long, bloody history. And the Arcturians, for all their advanced technology and perfect protocols, were only beginning to realize what they had awakened.